Welcome back to the Checkmk Synthetic Monitoring series. In the last episode, we helped our hero Bob to prepare a clean and isolated Python environment using RCC and start VS Code from an activated environment. And in this episode, it's time to finally build his first test. A test that enters a complaint in the supermarket complaints portal, just like a real user. First, we will explore the application we want to test. Then we create the high-level keywords. We see how easy it is to find out element IDs on web pages, and then implement the keywords of the first test. This is the user-facing part of the application. Here the user enters the subject, the message, and the supermarket location. A short side note about the last field, token. We want to avoid overloading the app with tests running for a longer time than needed. And for that reason, it is restricted to a time-limited token that you can generate using the green link and have sent to your email address. Once the customer has clicked on the Submit button, the site confirms it by showing a unique ID. Then we have the UI used by the support employee. He logs in with the username agent and the password. And for your 7-day access, the password is the same as the test token. The application is working properly when the message just sent appears in the inbox with its ID. And that's exactly what we are going to automate now. Let's go! Since this is a web-based test, we will use the browser library, which is actually based on the Playwright engine. So for that we type library browser. You also may have heard of Selenium. There is also a library for Selenium in Robot Framework, but my advice is always use the browser Playwright library. It is much more modern and faster than Selenium. At the very beginning of the suite, we want to launch the browser. The suite setup statement allows to execute a certain keyword before the first test starts. The new browser keyword starts the browser. Headless equals false ensures the window is visible. This is helpful while developing. In production, we usually run tests headless, silently in the background. To create the first test case, we change to the section Test Cases and write the test case name without indentation. Create complaint. And similar to the suite, we can also use special keyword as a test level. It gets executed before the keywords in it are started. For this we write setup in brackets and new page, which opens a new tab with a URL that we pass as an argument. New page $URL. And instead of passing the URL directly, I use a variable. Variables in Robot Framework begin with a $sign and a pair of curly braces with a variable name in between. The variable can be initialized in the Variables section by just typing the name and the value. https supermarket complaints demo robotmk.org. Before we now write the atomic technical steps, let's outline the logical flow of our test. This helps keep things readable and modular. I will write two high-level keywords here, submit form and save complaint ID. Don't worry about the red underline. The robot code extension just wants to warn that these keywords are not defined yet, but it offers to create them for us. Just click the blue icon left to the line and choose Create Keyword. And you will see that the bodies of the keywords are created automatically. Of course, filled with placeholders. Now let's start with the implementation. I will show you an effective workflow that I always use to develop my tests. Let's set a breakpoint in the Submit Form keyword by clicking to the left of the line number. Then we start the debugger. The robot then pauses at our breakpoint while the browser is open in the background. Now we can inspect the page to find out which names, where they are called selectors, Robot Framework can use to access the fields in order to fill them with the values. To show the HTML source, we press F12 to open the developer tools on the right. With the activated element picker tool, we can click now on a page element and see its representation in the HTML source. For example, the subject field has the ID attribute subject. Let's go back to VS Code and edit our submit form keyword. I will remove the placeholder lines and write fill text ID equals subject. The floor is slippery. Fill text is a keyword from the browser library. It expects two arguments. First, the selector, here ID equals subject, and then the text to type in. Now we want to know whether this keyword works. Instead of always restarting the test, I will just copy this line into the debug console below and run it ad hoc. A return value of none means that it worked. If the selector is wrong, we see a clear error message. And the nice thing about this workflow is that it allows us to instantly interact with the page and continue directly with the other keywords. The IDs for the other fields are message, city, and token. Fill text ID equals message. I almost slipped at the cheese counter. Then fill text ID equals city, Munich, and fill text ID equals token. We also test these keywords again one by one in the debug console. And it worked perfectly. All fields are filled now. Finally, the robot should click on the button with the ID Submit BTN to send the message. You probably guessed it already. The keyword is click. Click ID equals submit minus BTN. We also execute this keyword ad hoc in the debug console. And the app shows us the ID of the message. Great! Now we implement the second keyword in the first test case. It should save the message ID. To ensure that the ID is visible after the submission, we add a 1 second wait at the end of the previous keyword. Ideally, you would add an assertion that waits for this element, but I want to keep the example simple. So let's move the breakpoint to the next keyword, save complaint ID. I now restart the debugger with the green rounded arrow. The first keyword runs through and the robot now pauses at the second keyword. And back in the browser, I inspect the element that shows the ID. The ID attribute of the request ID is request-ID. To read visible text from page elements, we are using the keyword getText. GetText ID equals request-ID. Let's try it out in the console. Works. This is exactly the ID which is shown in the page. By writing a variable before the keyword, the ID is stored there. It's important to note that variables that are created that way are only valid within this keyword. But we want to use the ID in the second test also. For that reason, we create a second variable request ID, which has the scope suite. var $curly braces request ID, assign the value of ID, scope equals suite. And this makes the ID a kind of visible for the other tests in the whole suite as well. And finally, we can use the log keyword to write the saved value to the log file. Log, the request ID is, and then the variable request ID. Great, we have now written our first test case consisting of two keywords, submit form and save complaint ID. Let's run the full test once. Normally, the HTML log from Robot Framework should appear here on the right, but on some systems, I don't know the reason, it's not visible from the very start, like here. But we can fix that quickly. Just use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-Shift-P, on Mac it's Command-Shift-P, to open the command palette and enter the search term Settings. Then choose Settings UI. And in the robot code entry under Extensions, select Run. And here change the first entry Open Output after Run from None to Log. And if we now try again, the log file opens on the right side in the internal HTML viewer. Great. The button at the top right allows you to open the log in an external browser, which sometimes make it easier to read. The Robot Framework HTML log contains an expandable tree structure of all suites, tests and keywords inside, including their states. The test create complaint, initially executed new page, and this was then followed by our two user keywords submit form and save complaint ID. And within these keywords, the encapsulated keywords. And we can see that the request ID was also logged correctly. Great, we now have a working test that submits the form and saves the ID of the message. And in the next video, we will use that ID to log in as the support agent and verify that the complaint really arrived in the inbox. And that will complete our end-to-end flow. Now it's your turn. Try it out yourself and let me know in the comments below if it worked for you. See you in the next video.